Shalom everyone, and welcome back to Insights in the Parsha of the Week, Parshat Bo, based on the teachings and introductory ideas and concepts of Rebbe Nachman. In particular, we're working on Likutey Moharan Lesson 24. The Parsha, all the Parshas are just wealthy with so many details. And again, like I said in the past, there's only so much we can do. We're going to focus on this Parsha, Bo, on Moshe Rabbeinu's wording and the wording of the Torah regarding the plague of the firstborn, the last plague. When Pharaoh finally got upset at Moshe Rabbeinu, saying, "Be gone, leave, and next time you come, don't see my face anymore, because next time you come, you will die." And that's when Moshe Rabbeinu revealed to Pharaoh the last makkah, and he said to him, the wording, let's take a look at the wording. Okay, it says, the Moshe Rabbeinu says that Hashem is going to come and to swipe out, smite all the firstborns. Okay, so he tells him that and tells him the whole story, what's going to happen, and then he leaves upset, Moshe Rabbeinu. And then in Revi'i, so we're looking at chapter 11, verse 4, the beginning of the fourth aliyah. So Vayomer Moshe, Ko Amar Hashem, Kachatzot halayla ani yotze betoch Mitzrayim. Okay, Moshe said, this is also in front of Paro, before he left. Thus says Hashem, Kachatzot, which means approximately, approximately at midnight, halayla, ani yotze betoch Mitzrayim. Hashem says, I will come in Egypt, myself, and smite out all the firstborns, okay? And then when Hashem actually did it, so we go further in the Parsha, so we look in Shishi, the sixth aliyah. So this is chapter 12, verse 29. It says, Vayhi bachatzi alayla, and it was at midnight, not at approximately midnight, bachatzi alayla, at midnight itself, Vashem hikak chol bechor be'eretz Mitzrayim, mi-bechor Paro hashev al kiso, ad bechor shevi. Okay, asher bebeit habor. At midnight, at the middle of the night, half of the night, Hashem he wiped out, killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from Pharaoh's firstborn son until etc. Okay, so Rashi says, why does Moshe Rabbeinu use the word kachatzot? So Rashi says a few things, but one of the things he says is kachatzot. When Moshe Rabbeinu told him, he said at around midnight. He said because man can make a mistake. If now the person, the Egyptian, the advisors of the scholars, the sorcerers, whatever of Pharaoh, based on their calculation, what time is midnight, and then the actual plague didn't take place then, so they say, you see, he didn't keep his word. it's a question. We know what in the world you should be crying over what happened. Instead, no, it didn't happen at midnight, so we found a fault in God. Chas Shalom. It's a question, but because they make mistakes on their calculation, so Moshe Rabbeinu, who knows Hashem knows exactly when midnight is, he says kachatzot for their sake. Okay, but this whole thing, why midnight? Why does this makkah of the firstborn take place at midnight? What's so special about midnight? And it's such a big deal. And Moshe Rabbeinu has to say kachatzot, there should be no error. At approximately midnight, and when Hashem did it, at chatzot, at midnight. What's going on here? Okay. First one, the Midrash says that really Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu at night time, I'm gonna come in to kill the firstborn, and it was Moshe Rabbeinu who was the one who initiated at approximately midnight. So Hashem said Moshe says something, I'm not gonna follow him. It's not gonna look good. So I'll agree to Moshe Rabbeinu's midnight thing. Meaning, according to the Midrash, it was Moshe Rabbeinu who initiated that midnight should be the time of smiting the Egyptians' firstborn. But what's this thing of midnight still? We have a question. What in the world? What does midnight have to do? Just one day, let Moshe Rabbeinu stick up his staff in the sky, whatever, and then let the destructive forces come and with Hashem and kill all the firstborn. Why do we need night and midnight? From Noson, he goes into the whole deep secret of midnight. What is midnight? What is really midnight? Midnight is the joining of two opposites. It's the joining of dark and night, merged. You would think that's morning, that's dawn. Dawn is the end of the night and the beginning of the day. That's not the merging though. That's like one dominion of night ending and the dominion of the day beginning. We want a point where both are interwoven and working together. What's midnight? That it's technically dark outside. It's the darkest point of the night technically, and yet it's the beginning of the day. The beginning of the day, the opening of the new day, of the light of the new day, is at midnight. You say, what? It's dark. I don't see light. And yet, we're taught from the Zohar, from everything, that midnight is the biggest time of compassion. When you want to daven about something, the best time to daven about it is at midnight. Rebbe Nachman talks about this in several places, that midnight is such a propitious time to activate compassion. It's when all the gates are opened in heaven. That's why the idea of getting up at midnight to mourn over the destruction of the temple, or to get up at midnight and to do Hitbodedut and talk to Hashem and to learn Torah, the best time for any of this is at midnight, okay? Why? It's joining, merging of the two opposites, like we said. It's technically dark, and yet we believe that it's the opening of the biggest light. In fact, Rav Noson writes, it's the opening of the infinite light. The infinite light shines into this world at midnight. You don't see anything though, it's dark. But with emunah, we believe that it's actually happening. It's on one hand dark, but it's now, the reality is that it's light. This joining of two opposites and to accept them through emunah, through belief, is the biggest test of life. It's the biggest necessity to be able to go through all the tests. You see nothing, but you have to believe that there is something here. Midnight is exactly that idea. Chatzot Laila is a time when it's really dark, but the real truth is it's an opening of the biggest light. So the midrash on this week's parsha, there's a lot of midrash. It's unbelievable. You know, there's many insights just on the Korban Pesach, and then it goes into the idea of Vahi b'chatzi halayla. This wording of the beginning of the actual punishment of the killing of the firstborn, and it was at midnight and half of the night. So there's a lot of details in the midrash. One of them is the midrash uses a verse from King David from Tehillim. The verse reads, I think it's chapter 119, Chatzot laila akum lehodot lach al mishpatei tzidkecha. King David says, Chatzot laila, at midnight I will rise to praise you, Hashem, al mishpatei tzidkecha, on the justice you do, the justice of your tzedek, your righteousness. Lichora, seemingly it's two opposites. Mishpat means judgment, like strict punishment, and tzidkecha is tzidkut, righteousness. So the Midrash says that's exactly what happened at midnight in Egypt. That on one hand, the Jews were celebrating Pesach, they were eating the Korban Pesach, right, until that point of midnight, and that's when the redemption began. Paro went out, told looking for Moshe, Aaron, leave. It happened at midnight when he was stricken, that his firstborn son was killed, and all the other firstborns in Egypt, everyone was crying, etc. So for the Egyptians, it was dinim, it was judgment, it was justice, it was mishpat, and for the Jewish people, it was tzedek, it was righteousness, tzidkut. So King David saying, at Chatzot I'll rise, because it's the time when two opposites happen, where there's mishpat for those deserving mishpat, in other words, punishment, to execute justice where it's needed, and at the same time, it's tzidkecha, and the upper hand is obviously the tzedek. So that's why the verse reads by King David, mishpatei tzidkecha, the mishpat, the judgment of the tzedek, because really the cup is ultimately everything is compassion. Ultimately, everything is good, even what seemed difficult, and punishment was really for the good. We don't see it yet. We will see it, Bezrat Hashem. King David is getting up at midnight to thank you, Hashem, that of this joining of two opposites, that they're really one. That there's the mishpat doing its job of punishment, and at the same time there's the tzedek. Okay? So now Rav Noson goes into this idea a lot, says this is how it is in life. In life, you have the seeming setbacks, the seeming difficulties, the seeming punishment that I'm suffering, and Hashem, God is making me miserable and suffer, and that's like mishpat. But in reality, when you take everything with emunah and bitachon and simcha, you take things in a positive vein, a positive perspective, believing that there's more to life than just suffering, and believing that Hashem is a loving God, and everything ultimately is for the simcha of God, that He created the world in order to be benevolent and giving of His goodness. And I believe in that, and I have trust in that, and I'll be happy now because of that. So the mishpat becomes part of the tzedek. So now, midnight is the exact same idea. Midnight is, like we say, it's midnight, it's dark. It's the merging and joining. The first part of the night is considered judgments, dinim. And the second part of the night is considered compassion and rachamim. That's why it's important to go to sleep in the first half of the night and try to wake up in the second half. Not to switch like most people do. They're up all night until past midnight and then they go to sleep. Ideally, it's to sleep when there's judgment in the world, to take a break, to go to sleep, disappear, and when to be available, when to be up and involved is after midnight. That's the ideal time, B'ezrat Hashem. So it's a joining of two opposites, and we at the same time. And again, it's midnight. You see darkness, but reality, there's the biggest light opening at midnight. He says, Rav Noson, that it's such an et ratzon, a time of divine favor, that literally the infinite light is shining at that time. That's why it's such a special moment to be up at midnight. Rebbe Nachman says, by the way, the midnight lasts for 2 hours. It starts at midnight point, that's the climax, and it extends for 2 hours from that point. It's called the middle mishmar, the middle group of angels who are chanting before God in heaven, whatever, the middle group of angels. So we won't, that's all Gemara and Brachot, by the way. But the point is, the middle point of the middle mishmar is midnight. And it lasts for each mishmar, each group of angels took 4 hours. So it's 4, 8, 12. That's like already half a day technically, 12 hours. That's the maximum nights reaching 12 hours, let's say, in certain places in the world. So the middle point is in the middle of the 4 hours and extends another 2 hours. So he explains Rav Noson that the idea of getting up at midnight is propitious to help a person to decipher and see past the darkness of life and to see how it's really light. Other people see the darkness, suffering, it's finished, it's doomed. The other guy's laughing. Amazing. What amazing. So I see past what you guys are looking. You see the darkness. I see the light hidden within the darkness. I see the light there. I can't explain it to you, but I see it. Chatzot Laila is a special time for that to happen. So now, the firstborn were killed at midnight. That was the whole thing. At midnight they died. What's the idea of the firstborn? Rashi quotes a few times the famous Midrash Tanchuma, which explains, Rashi says, and why did Hashem use this setup of the 10 plagues like this, like blood, and then frogs, and then the lice, and then the mixed multitude of animals, and then the shchin, the boils. Why that? So the Midrash Tanchuma says that that's how armies do battle. It's like a structure. Okay, in first you cut the water supply, and then you make noise to scare them. That's the idea of the croaking of the frogs. Okay, the last point in the Midrash Tanchuma lists is when finally you want to bring down the enemy. Finally, like the beginning of the break of the downfall of the enemy is you kill their important people. The important people is the idea of the plague of the firstborn. When you get the important people, that's when you begin to subdue them. So by Paro in Egypt, okay, there were 9 plagues, but they were still alive. There was danger. Some people were dying. It was uncomfortable. There was the plague, the animals dying. There was the locust. There's like nothing to eat now. There was the hail. You can't walk outside. You get killed. There was the blood the water. They're thirsty. There was the noise of the frogs also inside the body, croaking. Very much discomfort. Okay, but you can survive because they didn't yet kill you. Once the firstborn plague took place, and it was killing the very important people. The firstborn is considered prime time, prime choice, prime quality. Okay, of great importance. When that was taken away, that was the beginning of the downfall of Egypt. That's why at that point, only then did Pharaoh say, leave. You can leave now and daven for me. Take what you need. Take gold, silver, whatever. Just go. Just go, okay? This happens, downfall of enemies happens at midnight. Because like we said, midnight is the joining of these two opposites. Meaning, when you successfully see the darkness as being a stepping stone for the infinite light, when you, as a sincere person, trying to do good, and then you get smacked with setbacks, and you don't misinterpret them to say, it's not for me, Judaism is not for me, and you don't, through the frustration, go to do more sins and more temptations, but you hold on, and you have emunah and bitachon and simcha that this is just a test and it's a preparation for something bigger. So with that attitude, you turn the darkness into the biggest light, where the infinite light is shining light into you, and this is how you bypass your enemies in life, whether physical enemies or spiritual enemies or difficulties or everything. All that is a test to see how you're going to react. If you react properly with the right attitude, you turn the darkest point into the biggest light. This is one of the practical points that come out of the midnight thing. We didn't answer yet why Moshe Rabbeinu said kachatzot. Okay, he said kachatzot. Rashi brings the simple that's for the sake of the advisors of Paro, that they shouldn't say Hashem didn't work at midnight. Okay, it sounds funny when you hear that. You're like, so what? Such a tiny point. So Moshe Rabbeinu said kachatzot. The letter kaf can mean like at approximately, kaf adimyon it's called, like around midnight. But the kaf in Kabbalah also corresponds to the Keter. The Keter is basically the gateway between the darkness to the infinite light. It's the gateway. So Moshe Rabbeinu saying kachatzot, he was mentioning that with his ratzon, like the Midrash said, that Moshe Rabbeinu chose midnight. And Hashem agreed to Moshe Rabbeinu to do at midnight. Because Hashem said to Moshe, at nighttime I'm going to hit the Jews, and I'm going to hit the Egyptians. And it was Moshe Rabbeinu who told Pharaoh, kachatzot. Okay, he chose midnight, but he added the kaf. Why did he say kaf chatzot, kachatzot? The kaf is the Keter. Moshe Rabbeinu knew the secret of midnight. He knew how powerful it was. It's the joining of the mishpat and the tzedek, and having it merged and mitigating, punishing what has to be mishpat, well, like in this case with the Egyptians, and rewarding those who deserve tzedek, which is the Jews. He knew that that's the point where it happens at midnight, so that's why he activated by saying kachatzot. And when Hashem actually himself, who is the infinite one, blessed be he, Ein Sof Baruch Hu, when he himself came to Egypt, so there was no need to say kebachatzi alayla, and it was at approximately midnight. No, he didn't continue with the wording of Moshe Rabbeinu because it was actually happening now. Moshe Rabbeinu was like requesting for it to happen, so he said kechatzot at approximately, but the kaf meaning the letter of the Keter, activating the gateway for the infinite light. Bit deep ideas, but we should be zoched to implement them and apply them into our lives, to just not to fall and crash from the darkness, rather to see the darkness as an opening for light. And like King David says, Chatzot Laila Akum, I will wake up at midnight to praise you, Hashem, on what? Al mishpatei tzidkecha. That the mishpat that I'm seeing, the difficulties, is really in the tzedek. It's for the good here. It's the cup, the big, who has the big part is the tzedek. It's mishpatei tzidkecha, the mishpat of the tzedek, meaning the tzedek is bigger, and the mishpat is within that. It can be nullified. It's only a prerequisite, a preparation to get to the tzedek. And the key for that, believe it or not, is midnight. We should be zochet to have the light of midnight in our life, and thus see life in a much brighter way. Shabbat Shalom Uvrach.